thanks everyone for being here. This is awesome. Really excited to chat with you all today and hear some of your stories and your thoughts. I'm just going to be here to help out with the chat and answer some questions, and I'll feed those back to you at the end, but I'll let Shalom take it away for some introductions.
Yeah. So welcome everybody to the Athletes Connect. I think, obviously when COVID hit, one of the initiatives that we did was to find a platform where we could still stay connected as athletes, right? And I think one of the most coolest things about us as athletes, to our new listeners that are on, especially to our guests that we have on our panel, I think one of the coolest things that we as athletes, what sport has taught us is to be adaptable, right? And so whether it be our training environment, the way we not only train, but, our routines and things like that. And we'll touch on, and today's topic will be, the importance of a balanced lifestyle. So in a moment, we'll go through some introductions, but, before that, I just want to share a little bit more about the Athletes Connect. Basically, it was a platform where we could connect around common trends, right? So that we could all stay competition ready. Now, Sam and Jill, I know you guys have just joined us, but the Special Olympics program are in the middle of a virtual summer games right now with our games being canceled. So that's been really cool. There are a couple fit challenge programs out there on Facebook that everyone's been trying to get involved with and handing in their exercises. These are definitely uncharted waters in terms of getting creative to stay, competition ready for whenever our world opens up. But for the most part, this whole thing was designed around ways to stay connected and talk about common trends, right? So we'll touch a little bit about your backgrounds, Jocelyn, Mike. We definitely have listeners on here who will resonate with a lot of the sports that you guys are involved with, and not only in your county, but just around Washington in general. So we're excited to have you all on the panel, and let's just go through some introductions. So Jocelyn, do you want to start? Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself? Obviously your name, let's just go with the sports that you play, what area you live in, and we'll just start with that.
Okay, my name's Jocelyn Gonzalez. People call me JoJo. I play flag football, basketball, soccer, softball. I did swimming 1 year, and I was going to do track this year. But, yeah. And I live in Bellingham, Washington. And I'm part of Bellingham Independence.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing, Jocelyn. Mike, you want to share a little bit about yourself, man?
Yeah, I'm Mike Walker. I am a paraeducator with the Oak Harbor School District. I play basketball and soccer mainly. Last year, I was defense captain for the Bellingham Independence team for flag football, and I was their main defender for basketball. But since I live in Oak Harbor, which is over an hour away, I'm going to be using a more local team. So, but yeah, basketball and soccer are my main sports. I have, in soccer, I am quite known for my strong kicking. So, in fact, Jocelyn can vouch because she's blocked a few of my kicks when she played goalie. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Jocelyn, is that true?
Yes, it is true. He almost hurt my hand, though, with one of them.
Oh, that's fantastic. Now, did you both say that you're both doing the virtual summer games currently?
I am.
Yeah, I'm not doing the virtual summer games this year just because I'm not as involved with some summer games usually. I used to do bocce ball, but I mostly stick with winter and spring seasons usually. So, yeah.
Perfect. No worries, Mike. To all our listeners that are listening, especially the Special Olympic athletes, feel free to put in the chat function what sports that you guys are involved with in the virtual summer games. Would love to hear it. So Sam, welcome to the Athletes Connect. We're proud to have you. You've got an interesting story, especially with sport and soccer. Am I correct? With Stanford University, now with the Seattle Reign. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. So yeah, I grew up here in Washington. I live in Bellevue, and that's where I am right now. I went to Stanford. I just graduated a couple weeks ago, so I guess technically I'm no longer at Stanford, which is still weird to think about that I'm not in college anymore. And I was drafted to the Seattle Reign, and so I will be joining them when they start training again this coming Monday.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Quite the career. And I'm sure everybody at the Special Olympics can join us in wishing you all the best when our world opens up with the Seattle Reign. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
And graduating college. Jill, welcome to the Athletes Connect. So a little bit about Jill. Jill is a good friend of mine from rugby. She's actually a lot stronger than me, and and she has a fantastic career in both 7s and 15s. She's an Olympian. She's got an incredible story about how she was able to fight off cancer, and just a wonderful human being as a whole. Now just recently retired, got a lovely family. Jill, welcome, and can you share a little bit about yourself to our listeners here?
Shalom, I feel like you just introduced me, man. Hey, everyone, I'm Jillion. I was captain of the 2016 women's rugby team in Rio. And before that, I played in 2 World Cups. And as Shalom mentioned, I've kind of had my run-in with cancer a few times. One right before Rio, and then again after the Olympics was over. I have a son who's 2 years old and a wife. And I also like to roast coffee. I'm a really big snob when it comes to coffee, and CrossFit, yoga, basically anything where someone tells me what to do, I'm like totally game. So.
Well, that's fantastic. We're really glad to have you both on. I'm sure the topic that we're going to talk about today, the goal is, what could we, given our current climate with COVID, right, which is at the forefront of everybody. Sam, you're training at home. Jill, you've been a tremendous athlete in your time. What could we do as athletes to stay competition ready, right, during this time? And today's topic, we're going to talk about the importance of having a balanced lifestyle. So all 4 of you play, various, have probably had your hand in various sports at some point in your careers. So let's just start with Mike. Mike, do you want to share a little bit about, like, what is importance of a balanced lifestyle? What does that mean to you when you hear that?
Well, a balanced lifestyle is very important because not only is it great to be involved with sports because you are getting the strength training and the cardio and the endurance training, but you also have to be able to have a work life and if you want to have a family life, because the thing is, even though all of us Special Olympic athletes are involved with sports, it is important to have that balance, because that way you can be successful and you can divert your energy elsewhere to help you stick with that routine and structure when you're not able to do sport, like especially in this season with COVID.
Right. That's fantastic. Jocelyn, what does having a balanced lifestyle mean to you? I mean, you just mentioned that you work at Fred Meyer's, and then obviously you play a variety of sports. What else is important to you?
Hanging out with friends.
Yep.
And family, and like coloring books and doing dot-to-dots for leisure, and going on walks.
Definitely. So you mentioned you got that social aspect with your family and friends. You've got your hobbies that you mentioned. I think those are all, I think, important things as before COVID, right? We were consumed by sport. We had sport all around us. And to have that sort of balance around you, I think you've named a few important pieces there. Sam, you've had a recent career with soccer through college. I'm pretty sure, what was that routine like? Can you touch on a little bit about what the life of a soccer player was at Stanford? It's a pretty profound program, and can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I definitely there was an adjustment period when I first got to college and figuring out ways to balance soccer and school and all the different social things that I wanted to do as well. And I basically found out in my experience over the course of my years as a student athlete that when I was able to make a schedule for myself and make sure and carve out times for things that weren't necessarily sports related, whether that was going to see friends or baking or reading or even just little things like that didn't have to do with soccer, I found myself that much more energized and refreshed when I was able to return back to training or practice. And so I think for me, I've just found that it's important to find other things that I like to do besides soccer, even though I do dedicate a lot of time to that, because then that just makes it that much more enjoyable. And when I do get to go play or train or practice or go to games or whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of our listeners here, a lot of them have part-time jobs. A lot of them obviously play sports when we can and train at home right now during COVID. How important was it for you? It sounds like you were juggling a lot of moving pieces too, with school, sports, and it's quite a tough regime. How important was it to have a schedule? Or have a routine, so to speak? Was that something that was deliberately done?
I think to a certain extent, we had schedules between classes and practice. There were things that were just set for us, but I found for myself that adding in a schedule even for just my own personal time was really helpful in making sure that I finished my homework or took a nap if I was tired, or like I said, hung out with friends. And I think that setting a schedule makes it really easy to keep track of everything, because I think when you have a lot going on and you are trying to find balance and ways to check everything off, like writing it out and having something that you can follow is really helpful in keeping it all organized.
Right on. That totally makes sense. To all our listeners, please use the chat function if scheduling is something that's worked for you. I think us on the panel, we're intrigued to hear how many use personal scheduling as a part of their day-to-day to help them get through their days. Jill, so excited to have you on. Could you touch a little bit about just what importance of a balanced lifestyle, what does that mean to you when you hear that?
I think it means finding joy in other things that can energize you. And as Sam had mentioned before, occupying yourself with an extracurricular hobby or activity that kind of distracts you from thinking and obsessing about rugby or soccer or bowling or whatever your sport is. Because I think we can all raise our hands and say, yeah, we've been down that rabbit hole where we think about practice too much, or we think about the games and your competition and, maybe missing it because of COVID. And to be honest, like, you can compete with yourself in just about anything. And that's what I do. Like, this sounds really stupid. Like, I will vacuum the house as fast as I can, but do it really well and be like, all right, that took me, 12 minutes or whatever. And the next time I'll say, okay, can you beat that? But is, I don't know, have something in your hand, or is August, my son, is he awake and trying to take the vacuum from me or whatever. Now that I'm a retired athlete, I try to make everything a competition, everything I do. But going back awesome. Going back to work-life balance, or just balancing, taking care of my body was always a big priority. And because I knew for all of us, we only have a short amount of time to actually compete. And whether because we're aging or because of injury or because of COVID or things that are outside of our control, we can still take care of our bodies for longevity and health. And so I spend a lot of time doing that as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, you talked about longevity, and you brought up a little bit about nutrition. How important is that to a balanced lifestyle? Nutrition as a whole.
Yeah, I think nutrition is incredibly important. Having a balanced plate, and also not. I'm kind of a firm believer. Like, I eat dessert every day. Like, I don't mess around with it, right? Like, life is too short not to enjoy yourself. So, for breakfast I might have egg whites or eggs, or just lots of greens and veggies and fruit and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's all about quality. And, every once in a while, for your mental health, please just have a chocolate chip cookie or whatever your heart wants, and that's going to make you happier to compete on the field. Now, don't eat a dozen, don't be crazy, but definitely take care of your body, take care of yourself, and have a cookie. Just do it. It's okay.
I totally can resonate with that. I totally can resonate that. People think that if you play at a high level, that you have picked a perfect diet, when really it's, there's some sort of, with all the studies that are out there, documentaries that are out there, I think the ultimate thing is if you do it in moderation, you'll be okay. Mike, what do you think about that, man? Do you have a sweet tooth as well, or is nutrition a big thing?
I will admit, nutrition can be quite hard sometimes. I am definitely a sucker for pizza. I like getting the large hot and ready from Little Caesars once or twice a week, usually only once, but I do try to walk 5 miles every single day at least. And I haven't eaten French fries in over 13 years. I haven't eaten donuts in over 12 years. And I try using things like guacamole or sriracha sauce instead of mayonnaise and butter. So yeah, so nutrition is important, and I agree that is a huge thing about balance and stuff. Yeah. I am a sucker for dark chocolate, so yeah.
Fantastic. Jocelyn, what is what does nutrition mean to you when you talk about a balanced lifestyle? Is that something that's that you think about when you talk about a balanced lifestyle? Is that part of your routine? Is it something consciously? What do you think will resonate with our listeners?
I think it's very important to have nutrition and just keeping you healthy and having the good choices to choose from, and lots of fruit and vegetables. I'm also doing the virtual wellness club.
Yep.
Which I meet on Tuesdays, and we talk about this past Tuesday we did a healthy snack, and we actually got to make it.
That's awesome. Jocelyn, I want to ask you one other thing. You talked about getting up pretty early for work, and then you work quite the shift and getting off at 2. Then pre-COVID, did you typically go to Special Olympic events after that, play Special Olympic sports? Were you involved? Was that sort of how your days sort of went?
No, I actually would have Saturdays and Sundays off.
Yeah.
For COVID. So
when we're talking about a balanced lifestyle, how important is rest, do you think?
Very important.
Sam, do you want to talk a
little? Energized and alert.
Yeah, and it's refreshing, right?
Yes.
And do you take much? People wind down in different ways, whether that be reading or simply just meditate or just sit still, and either they relax with their kids or family or friends, and just have a conversation. Are there any particular ways that you like to wind down?
Like taking deep breaths and just meditate.
That's awesome. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about your hefty schedule playing soccer at a high level? How important is it to you could be hustling, bustling every day with training schedules. How important is rest? Both mentally and physically. You want to touch on those two?
Yeah, both mentally and physically, I think rest is so important just to help you reset. And especially the busier you are, the more important it is to get enough rest. That way you wake up and you're able to do everything you want to do in a day. And I think in terms of like physically everyone says it, like getting a good night's sleep is so important. I've just found over the years that I have to it's non-negotiable for me, especially when I have games that I'm going to go to bed early. So even if there's other things I want to do, or if I need to sacrifice going to hang out with friends or finish homework early, I always tell myself to make sure and get a good night's sleep, especially when we're in season, just because like playing a sport is pretty tiring. So
yeah,
you need a lot of sleep. And then also just in terms of mental health, I think that being well rested, whether that's taking time away from your sport to do other hobbies, or making sure and getting enough sleep each night, it can just definitely help you feel, like I said, ready to take on the day. You just feel better when you have a good night's rest. So
yeah. And now, like when you take rest in between training sessions or a days off from a heavy week, is that something you schedule? Like, do you do that deliberately?
yeah, I always make sure and have one complete day off every week. Sometimes I usually do Sundays, just that's how my schedule works out. But if I have to shuffle things around with practice or games, I just always make sure and have one full day where I don't play soccer and just completely reset. And then on a day-to-day basis, if I'm in between trainings or in training camp, I'm a big fan of napping. So that's one way I like to get rest. Or as I mentioned before, I like to read too. So those are my two go-tos, napping and reading.
I love it. I love it. Jill, you competed at the Olympics. You're the captain of the women's team. You played at literally the highest level in the sport of rugby. How important was it for you to have a routine, and how does that impact? How did that impact to help shape who you are today in terms of like the habits that you got into?
Oh, sure. I love routine and structure. I would say it really helped me manage the theory of like doing more is better, because that's not true. Like doing more is actually it can be a detriment to yourself and to your health physically, and just like mentally as well. And so having a routine would kind of, I don't want to say box man, but like it makes you like adhere to the schedule and to the agenda. And so that's why it was really important for me. So similar to Sam, I would have a day off, but I would have more than that, maybe 2.5 days, just because of training schedules and things like that. And like now I crave routine and structure even in my retired life. And so I'm still an early riser. I wake up at 6 a.m. I get up, have my coffee and sit out in the garden and meditate. I think meditation is incredibly important and just daily practice. So I try to find structure in almost everything I do, and I think it's really important.
That's fantastic. and that, I mean, you've had a pretty heavy schedule for a full-time athlete. What does it look like? What are some favorite things for you to do when you quote unquote switch off? Like, what's the favorite hobby outside of sport?
Oh man, well, favorite hobby out of sport, I would say it's coffee roasting. It's kind of manually intensive though. Yoga, I like yoga a lot. I'm not good at it, and so I have to remind myself like that's the one thing I can't compete in. Like if I can find the yoga with all the pillows and the blankets where you just chill out for an hour and a half, That's my thing, because you really can't, like, if you close your eyes and it's okay, and then I don't have to look at it anymore and like compete, because I'll be like, oh, how is she doing that pigeon over there? And so yeah, I do a lot of yoga, napping, meditating, and reading. So.
And how do you feel that helps you mentally? Did all that help you mentally? Like, how do you think that impacts you?
Oh, sure. I just like balance in general, and gives you a break from, the hamster wheel in your brain,
Sure.
to
Yeah.
like go into your imagination and go into a book, or kind of find joy elsewhere. I think
Yeah.
really can settle your mind. And that way, when you get back onto the practice field or in competition, you can focus. So that's how I think it's really important.
That's fantastic. Hey, I'm intrigued just with what Jocelyn does and Mike, how they balance, both, all the Special Olympic sports that they're involved in, plus, having a job at the same time. I'm intrigued with all our listeners. If you could type in how many, what jobs do you have, who are they with, and how do you balance that? We'll be intrigued to hear about that just from the panel standpoint. Feel free to keep the questions coming on there. I see there's a lot of good dialogue happening on there. But Mike, I wanted to ask you, you play basketball and soccer. Do you have a favorite more than the other?
That is a good question, because even though I love doing defense in basketball, because I am taller than 80 to 90% of the athletes, and it's hard for them to shoot past me. Soccer is wonderful in its own way, because I can go through a number of athletes and shield the ball a little bit easier. So that is a really tough question. I would say when I was in high school and middle school, soccer was definitely my sport. I was known as PK for power kicker in school, but
yeah,
I do know, whether it's basketball or soccer, and other athletes probably know this about me if they've played me, is I tend to get double teamed or triple teamed just because I'm tall. And it's like, I will jokingly complain about it, because it's like, really, you guys are just assuming I'm good because I'm tall. And it's like, yeah. So even with soccer, that people will guard tall people, and it's sort of funny because the ball's on the ground, so you would think tall people would not do as well. So yeah.
Totally. Shifting gears here a little bit. I mean, COVID-19 has forced us all to be, home more often than not, right? Or training remotely, so to speak. If there's one new skill that COVID has allowed you to pick up, I mean, surely someone's picked up something new during this time. Like for me, going from a professional athlete, I feel like I'm a professional landscaper now and a professional chef. YouTube is definitely helping me. I'm not sure about you guys, but I like to say I'm a little bit better of a cook now. What's a new skill that everybody's picked up? Talk about having a balanced lifestyle. Sam, let's start with you. What's a new skill that you've been forced to learn during COVID?
I have been blessed with this time and have actually been able to do a couple things. My mom decided that we're going to repaint some of the rooms in our house. So now I'm an expert, priming the different brushes, the rolling, I've got it all down. We also, like you, we've been doing a lot of cooking and baking. We've been keeping a list of we've been trying new recipes. So that's been really fun. Those are both kind of things I do with my family. Personally, I've been practicing how to juggle, like not soccer juggle, like juggle like this. So it's getting better. I still could use some work, but like you said, YouTube's been helpful for me on that one too.
Absolutely. I could definitely resonate with, juggling with the hand-eye coordinate. I still find that challenging, and I've been trying to do it for years, And I know Jill's laughing because she knows we used to practice that all the time. And I was just I was just clumsy like that. But anyway, Jocelyn, what's a new skill that you've picked up during COVID? or a hobby or something that, something that you wouldn't have done if it weren't for COVID, if that makes sense? Have you read more books more often than not, or?
No. Probably like word searches or dot to dots.
Nice. You enjoy playing like sort of board games and word games and things like that? Have you discovered some new ones?
No.
No worries, Jocelyn. Mike?
I would say a new skill or hobby that I've gotten since I started. I finished writing a book, and so I think a skill or a hobby that I've gained appreciation and experience with is an appreciation for Latin, because I try to use some Latin for different magical abilities in my book, since it's fantasy genre. And so I am inspired by Latin, Greek, and other older languages, because it is amazing how much of our American or English is actually derived from Latin and Greek.
That's very fascinating. That's amazing, Mike. Very intriguing to hear about that, and you're probably right. Me being one of them. Jillion, what's something new? I'm ready to hear this. What's something new that you picked up during COVID?
I think we're too similar, because when you said landscaping, I was like, oh yeah. I'm building a deck. That's my next project, and I've done some wallpapering, which is fun, and I've built an accent wall. It's fairly easy, like in a grid monochromatic style, with wood, and then you caulk it and paint it, nail gun, boom, boom, boom. I don't know how to explain it, but just imagine a lot of squares with wood on your wall, and you paint it, and it's all the same color. So yeah, but I'm excited to get back into the landscaping, like inside the house. I'm like kind of into it. I'm more outdoorsy building stuff. So the deck is next on my list.
That's fantastic. I've got one more thing to ask, to do one more round to everybody before we open it up to all these questions coming through. How important to a balanced lifestyle is setting goals? Right, we got short-term goals with, depending on how long COVID is, and then we've got goals when, our world opens up and competition starts back up, right? For you, Sam, I know that the season, are you in the middle of your season now, Sam, or is it off, or whenever your season is? But what are yours? How important do you tie in, to a balanced lifestyle? How important is having goals tied to that?
Well, I guess first to answer your question, I don't think we technically don't have a season this season. I don't think there was a training or a tournament in Utah a month ago, and I think they're hoping to get some more games in before the end of this year. But I think we're just training until then, since everything is still kind of wonky with COVID. But I think setting goals is really important for sports and just in general, like you said, for having a balanced lifestyle, because I think when I write things down, when I have specific goals, whether that's regarding soccer or whether that's goals I have for myself every day, like to meditate every day or just to remind myself to do things outside of soccer, I think it's a good way to keep you on track, because it's easy to say, oh, I want a balanced lifestyle, and then get lost in everything you have to do every day.
Sure.
So I think setting goals is a good way to keep structure and just keep you on track.
I saw somebody just put through, what about long-term goals? Is that something that you've thought about already?
What are my long-term goals?
Yeah, someone just commented about what about long-term goals? Have you thought about a long-term goal?
Well, I guess I've been working towards a long-term goal. Like I said, when I got injured, my long-term goal has just been to get back and be able to play with the rein. But I guess kind of going off what I said too, I think long-term goals are important as well as like the shorter, like
Yeah.
day-to-day ones. I
That
think you
makes
need
sense.
a good balance of both.
Yep. Perfect. Mike, what are your thoughts about having goals as it pertains to a balanced lifestyle?
I think goals are absolutely important. One big goal that's definitely going through my mind and my coworkers' mind is to be flexible and adaptable and successful, especially when school opens back up, or whether it's distance learning or hybrid learning, like face-to-face, because we are actually, as teachers and paraeducators, we're not as frontline as nurses right now, but when students come back to school, we're going to be in the petri dish of the building. So I mean, we have to have our we're going to have masks, we're going to have plexiglass, we have to take temperatures on our students that happen to be there. So yeah, it's going to be quite an adventure, and we're going to have to be flexible and adaptable on trying to train parents to follow rules as well. So yeah. So goals are definitely important. Short-term goals are very important, and that's my short-term goals. Long-term goals, I don't know, maybe sometime in the future, start a family sometime, but that's way out in the future. So yeah.
Jocelyn, what do you think about goals as it pertains to a balanced lifestyle? Is that something that's important to you? And what advice do you have for our listeners?
I think it's very important to set goals for like personal or just short term or long term. It's a really important for having goals to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. Now, did you have goals specifically for COVID? Like, do you think once COVID hit, obviously COVID wasn't, in everybody's plans, but when COVID hit, as athletes, was there a shift in your goals, you personally?
No, not really.
Not really?
No.
Jill, what about you? What do you think about goals as it pertains to a balanced lifestyle, and with COVID hit, what do you think, what advice could you give our listeners, with maybe training, adapting their trainings to, staying at home orders?
Yeah, I look at goals as a process goal and an outcome goal, and along with short and long term. The reason I am a little bit hesitant to create long-term goals is because they need to be, you can create them in your mind, but you have to be super flexible with adjusting them. So instead I focus on, okay, what's my short-term process goal to achieve this aspect? Maybe it's a medium length goal, which might contribute to this long-term goal, but having some flexibility around your goal setting, I think, is really important. And right now with COVID, not knowing when the world is going to open up competitively, I think you can do the things that take care of your body first and foremost. So yoga, recovery, and the things that you really hate doing, but you need to do them. So maybe it's your skill work, or maybe it's watching film, or kind of doing some of those things that are monotonous and take a lot of time and focus. But you can spend 15 minutes watching film and check it off your box. It still counts. It doesn't have to be this like 3-hour sit down, like drill. It's just about, okay, have I seen the scenario? Got it. Have I seen the scenario? Or like I play by end scenarios, because you have to, as an athlete, kind of figure out what what you might do in scenario A. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So, you can do that in your mind. And I think, when I wasn't feeling well or really struggling to do anything physical, I would play a game in my mind. And luckily rugby sevens, so the Olympic version of sevens is only 15 minutes. So it's not like I had to meditate, but I would sit there and I would think about the whistle and the sound of the whistle and maybe who I was standing next to on the field and who was the referee and what tournament we were at or what game and who we were playing. And I'd play the entire match in my head, and I would also put mistakes in that match. So I would drop the ball and I would be like, darn, I dropped the ball or I made a mistake. And how am I going to bounce back from that mistake? So that you have a plan in your head. So when it does come back to competition and that happens to you and you're like, oh, I played this game. It might've been in your head, but you completely played this game and you know how to react. So that's what I would do if you find that interesting.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You talked about an important mental aspect there in terms of preparing. That's something that we could all do now during COVID, right? Is stay strong mentally. Certain ways you can definitely train your mind just like you would train physically. So that's important. But you also touched on process goals. Now, during COVID, one of my process goals was definitely, sports. I'm sure same as our listeners and everyone on the panel here, sports, I've made so many friends because of sports. I was able to connect so much to different people, but I felt like pre-COVID, I never really took the time to be still and connect properly. Do you know what I mean? So I've made it a process goal to during these last couple months to really take time to reflect on my, obviously you on your real your big friendships, and then those who you've met along the way, just reconnect again. And and I'm glad that I've made friends with you guys, Jocelyn, Sam, and Mike, as sport brings us all together now, and to all our listeners, and of course Jill, a longtime friend who I'm glad to reconnect with again. So that's definitely something that I've worked on, and I'm not sure if everyone has as well. I'm sure a lot of listeners can resonate with that, because sometimes all we've had lately is a bit of time, right? So Leah, I think, what time are we at? Geez, that was quick. We got a couple minutes left. Shall we open the floor to some questions?
Absolutely. Time does fly. So I have a few questions here that I've collected through the chat as we've been going. And if anyone has any other questions, you can throw them in the chat or in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. But I'll start off with just a few of them here. Let's see. Christina had a lot of awesome questions. I'll start with one of them, which was, how do you set goals for yourself and structure yourself? So if anyone has thoughts on that, feel free to jump in.
I have a few good examples that work for me. So to whoever asked this question, I think it was Christina, one thing that definitely works for me for setting goals is either pen or pencil to paper. Making lists works really well for me. I know that back when I was starting off working and stuff, lists work terrifically. So yeah, if I can make a list for the day or the week or something, that is much more effective for me to actually accomplish it, because when you take the time to actually write it down, it actually ingrains in your brain a little bit better. Versus just trying to remember it on your own, and at least you have evidence there. So I would suggest, for me, and if it works for you, definitely make lists and or reminders, whether it's on your phone, iPad, computer, or pen and paper.
I think that's great. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to add? I totally agree with you, Mike. I'm all about lists.
You know, Christina, I noticed in your chat that you like to cook. So maybe a goal would be to do a new recipe every week and out of a book. And in that book, your long-term goal would be to finish that book. Does that make sense? And so you can take a hobby or do anything that you like and set kind of goals around completing a task. So that's kind of what I would do based on your interest.
Christina had another cool part to her question, and she asked, how do you get other athletes to do this? So, and I think, Christina, that's awesome. It goes a little bit beyond specifically athletes, but just in general about encouraging other people to have a balanced lifestyle and motivating others. Does anyone have anything to share about that? I think, in a sense, we're all doing that right now, but if there's anything else to add on.
I think that is a very good question, but also a very tricky question that Christina brought forth, because there's a very common famous phrase that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. And I try to do with my students all the time. I will remind my students to tie their shoes or not to run on wet concrete a minimum of 20 times, and they have to be the ones to choose to listen. So I mean, you can be a great support there and offer the resources, but in the end it has to be that person's decision to actually do it, because if you try forcing them to do it, that can actually cause you not to be as supportive, and also it can cause them to rebel, which makes them even less effective in some ways. So that is a terrific question. How do you get somebody to do it? And all I can recommend is give them the resources, and then they have to take the initiation to try to partake in it.
I'm sure you run into that a lot as a teacher. Jocelyn, do you have any thoughts on that one?
No, Mike said it all.
And I really do think that you all being on this panel and sharing your advice and thoughts to everyone listening is such a cool way to do that. And Christina, I know you're a leader too, so you do those sorts of things as well. All right, let's see. From McKenna, I have a question for Sam. What was it like getting drafted to play women's soccer professionally?
I can honestly say that it was a dream come true. I've been playing soccer probably since I could run around, because both of my parents actually played in college, and I've always said that my dream was to be a professional soccer player. So for that to happen and to be real, like I said, it's a dream come true. And then on top of that, to be playing for my hometown team, like the team that I grew up watching and thinking like, I want to be like those girls, those women when I grow up, is pretty cool. So yeah, I'm very excited. And when it happened, I almost couldn't believe it when I saw my name get drafted. So that was a pretty surreal moment for me.
That's awesome. Congrats. All right, let's see. We have a few, let's see, we have about 10 minutes. So let's see, another question here. How do sports help you in other parts of your life? So kind of the other way around. Not only do other aspects of your life help you to improve on a whole, but how do your sports help you to succeed elsewhere?
I'll take that. Sports has definitely helped, as I mentioned earlier, helped shape who I am today, right? And so one of the main things I feel like sport has taught me is to, to understand how to communicate a little better. Definitely not the best at it, but still a work in progress. But definitely learning that everybody gives and receives communication differently, right? And so learning that skill to be able to communicate in an effective way is definitely a skill that I've one of the best skills that sport has taught me. And then the other thing is friendships, really. Honestly, that would be the best thing. And I mentioned it earlier, and I truly mean it. Like, I've made so many lifelong friends because of sport, and it's I think about it now, I'm like, geez, if it weren't for sport, how would I have made how do I make friends? So I can definitely attest to that.
Jocelyn, how about you? Are there things that you've learned from sports that help you in other parts of your life?
Communicating with others and like making friendships with sports and actually meeting other people from different teams in the state of Washington.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. Those are such important things that sports offer. Does anyone have anything else on that one?
I think for me, sports give you they give you an ability to be able to focus and your energy into the sport itself. So as a paraeducator, when I am working, I work with hundreds of students, and sometimes during the weekend, I just need to get that stress out or whatever. And exercise and sports is a great way for me to focus that into the running and into the competing of the sport. So I think that's one great thing about sports, is that you can use that focus to compete at a higher level.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. Okay, let's see. We can maybe do a few more here. Let's see. Someone asked, what helps you achieve your goals, and how do you get better in sports? Yeah, that's the gist. We've touched on this a little bit, but if there are some final parting words of wisdom.
Practice and repetition. It might not lead to perfection, because perfection is impossible, but it leads to experience and training, and with whether it's like hand-eye coordination, or even like going out for a walk, or like even doing your laundry or whatever. If you take the practice and the repetition of doing that, then you will be more successful, because it will be ingrained in your brain, and therefore you will have it as a trained skill for the future.
That was well said, Mike. Okay, this is a fun one. Who was your favorite athlete growing up? For anyone.
My favorite soccer player growing up, I guess this wasn't that long ago, but I always have thought Abby Wambach was just an awesome woman, and just such a cool person. And then I guess outside of soccer, I've always loved like Serena Williams too. So those would be two of my favorites.
All right. I have a few athletes, but this is going to age me a little bit. Roberto Baggio and Edu and Pele for soccer. And then for basketball, Michael Jordan, Dennis Rodman, Gary Payton, and Detlef Schrempf.
Oh my gosh.
Jocelyn, do you have a favorite athlete? Or someone also said in here a favorite team or role model. So if that's an easier one to answer, you could go with that too.
My favorite player in baseball is Tony Gwynn. My favorite basketball player is Michael Jordan. And then for football is J.J. Watt.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. I think we've answered most of these here. We have just a few minutes, so I guess I'll let you guys, if you have any other last thoughts here, balanced lifestyle, pieces of advice, and we're all in such a different world right now, having to adapt. I'm sure that sports, dealing with constant changes and just the mentality that you have to have as an athlete is all really helpful adapting to our new situation. Lizzie in the chat mentioned it's kind of hard to set long-term goals right now because there is so much uncertainty. But I think things like this are really cool to keep everybody focused on their goals and on the community that we all have together. If anyone has anything else you want to add in or share, go for it.
No, I just want to quickly say that I appreciate, the four of you jumping on this panel. I think this is an important time to stay connected, right? The worst thing we could do as athletes or as anybody right now is to isolate ourselves. So really appreciate you all taking the time to connect with our listeners during these uncertain times. So again, from me and everybody else listening, thank you so much. And any closing thoughts on our topic today would be appreciated.
Mike here again. The advice or parting thoughts that I would give, and this is for all athletes because I'm an athlete and I have autism, is try to find ways to be adaptable and to use your environment to your advantage, because in these chaotic times with COVID and not knowing what to do, you have to be able to adapt. And I know that's hard. I know that can be hard to adapt because a number of us might want to stay in the black or white area, and gray area can be tough. But being able to be flexible and to adapt and to use our surroundings, I think, is very important, because it'll help us not only keep our brains trained, but also to stay successful and also do read as well and research whatever you can about health, so that way you guys can also take care of yourselves, whether it's about nutrition or face masks or whatever. Just do what you can to try to be successful for yourselves and for those that are around you, that you care about you as well. So that's my parting words.
Thanks, Mike. Well, if there's nothing else, I really appreciate you all. Thank you for tuning in to the Athletes Connect. And I hope the listeners will definitely follow up with some of the information that we got here. We'll make sure that all those who registered will get some follow-up information on this. And we'll see you all next time. Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone, so much. Have a great evening.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.